Welcome to the Gym Owners Business Podcast with Mel Tempest. The Gym Owners Business Podcast is proudly supported and sponsored by Thomas Plummer, MyZone, Creative Fitness Marketing, and All Smiles Creative. The Gym Owners Business Podcast is part of the Gym Owners Business Network, which is the industry's go-to online hub designed to better service the needs of fitness business owners. The Gym Owners Business Network is currently finalising foundation memberships, so if you're a fitness business that would like to gain valuable and extensive exposure to the Australian and global fitness industries, then head to gymownersbusinessnetwork.net to find out more.
Well, good afternoon. It's Mel Tempest from the Gym Owners Podcast and Network. And today I'm speaking to Tarek Michael Chuzar. He is the co-director at the Functional Training Institute and co-author of the bestseller Purpose-Driven Movement. Good afternoon, Tarek.
Hey, Mel. How you doing?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for joining me on today's podcast.
Great to be on the show.
Absolutely. Now, you and I are both heading off to ExPro convention in Singapore at the end of June. And so what we'll be discussing in today's coffee podcast is all about Tarek's sessions at the event. Now, Tarek, let's get this underway straight away. What are you going to be delivering at the ExPro Ignite Session?
Yeah, perfect, Mel. I'm certainly looking forward to the event. It's going to be a cracker, some great speakers lined up. And obviously the fitness industry are putting on a great event, no doubt. Yes, so my whole talk, which would be just a snapshot into, I suppose, the sales experience. And the key word there is the experience, because ultimately how that transaction's done, whether it's on the phone, whether it's a walk-in, whether it's through Messenger or social media, there's always that initial point of contact that one has with the person that's interested in purchasing the product or the service. And so what we need to think about is not simply just automating that process, but there, I believe, needs to be a human element within that. And therefore that experience is dictated by that interaction between the person selling that service or product and the interested prospect. So how does that interaction take place in more of a dynamic way rather than simply just looking at it as a simple transaction? How can we treat it as a transformation? And so thinking about not just exchanging money for a service or product, but actually thinking about what are your values, what is the mission, how does one inculcate that whole purpose within that selling process? And therefore that's why I've deemed it the sales experience. And of course we're going to be covering as much systems in and around that as possible and give away in 20 or so minutes. But I suppose it's more of a mindset shift in and around thinking about not just simply a transaction that takes place, but a transformation through the service or product that you're offering. So I suppose there's some bigger picture stuff, but then I'll zoom in and hone in on some strategies that they can take away to implement that process, whether it's a walk-in, whether it's over the phone, there'll be a step-by-step process, or whether it's through social messaging. How do we actually create that initial connection and make that initial process profound?
So, Tarek, let me ask you, a lot of people get transaction and transformation confused. What's a really a brief way to explain the difference to our listeners?
Yes, very, very good. Now, put me on the spot, but rightly so there. So I suppose if we think of a transaction, and if we think of it purely from a member or a prospect, looking to join the gym, right? And so the simple way to look about it is, yes, they're going to pay me $59 a week. In return, they've given me money. They're going to get a service. But rather than thinking about simply that transaction that will take place, thinking about how that initial, interaction can then provide a basis for a transformation of that sale. So we're taking away, I suppose, the concept of sales, if you like. So whether it's, service or whether it's product, to more of a transformation that allows it to be a long-term transaction, if that makes sense. So rather than simply thinking short-term, yes, I'm going to get money for this PT or for this class, thinking about how your service or product is going to impact them in the long term. And so things like what do you stand for when you're thinking about that transaction taking place? So looking at like vision, that is really important, looking at the values that you stand for. And so are they the right fit, for example? So part of that transformation is really looking at, is that prospect a right fit for your service or your product? So looking at that authenticity piece within that. So, or otherwise moving them on or recommending them to, some other service. It could be that they're seeking something entirely different to what you're offering, rather than simply going, yes, this is a transaction, I can take advantage of that and therefore make it a transaction. Actually, can I transform this prospect into, hey, yeah, maybe they come on as a client, but maybe they're not a right fit. So it's I know that's quite loaded, but if the listener can kind of get out of that the idea that if we're going to make this an authentic process, which it really is, it's a process rather than just an outcome. So if we think process driven rather than outcome, if we think of incorporating our values, the vision, so that then that becomes profound, and then also the right fit. Are they the right fit? And so there'll be a process in and around identifying that. And of course, there are a lot of experts out there, like, Steve Jensen, who's a mentor of mine too, talks about personality profiling and looking at behavioral styles in the way that we sell or the way that we interact in a transaction to really make it transformational. So I hope, Mel, I kind of got that point across.
You did. And you did really well, Tarek. And I have to tell the listeners, I did put Tarek on the spot then, because there was two words that just jumped out at me when he was chatting, and that was the transaction and the transformation. And how I look at it in a shorter version is that the transaction becomes a transformation, and that transformation then becomes an experience which becomes a great retention tool. And as we know, retention is something that is extremely important in business, as you know. And when you retain members or you retain clients, they then refer people to another transaction that becomes a transformation. So I thought you did a fantastic job, and apologies for putting you on the spot there.
No, not at all. And here's a bit of a paradigm shift that a coach of mine taught me years ago, that think of this. So once they're in your door, so to speak, and there's this transformation process that takes place, and they're, obviously you're living up to, you're promising what you deliver. So what's important here is, rather than think of like upserve. So from here, then we can go, well, we could potentially sale them, but rather than say upsell, we say upserve or cross serve. So it's about the language that we use. And it's about thinking about it as a human transaction, not a robotic transaction. And therefore that transformation takes place. And as you rightly said, Mel, they'll start to refer others to a trusted service. And that all begins at that point of sale, if you will, that point of transformation. So I wanted to add that as well.
And I think what we'll do is our new hashtag for Tarek's podcast will be upserve. I like it. So moving on from that, Tarek, obviously, you're going to ExPro to deliver some other sessions. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about those sessions?
Yeah, sure. And I suppose the whole concept of Ignite and some of these other sessions is to promote the Game Changer program that both Dan and I co-founded, which is primarily when we started with Functional Training Institute, we had the technical programs, but then we morphed into the business side and solutions. So we will be promoting that and highlighting the importance of actually undertaking a fully fledged program that will allow people to access processes, systems, marketing, sales in an in-depth way, and to be able to actually grasp that. So in addition to the Ignite, I've got 3 other sessions. One of them is, two of them are technical. One of them is based on kettlebell 3D movement. So I'll take the selling kind of business hat off, so to speak, and I'll be putting on the technical noose, and I'll be delivering more of a interactive workshop on the, I suppose, specialness of the kettlebell, and looking at, broad movements with that. So that's going to be a very practical workshop. Another one is looking at effective ways to coach and cue clients, and that's run with one of our global master presenters, Felipe Pereira, who's from Portugal. So we'll be co-presenting on things like external cueing, how to impact clients through movement practice that uses effective ways to cue and communicate. And then I slip again my hat on for the business side of it, and I look at how to map one's values to enhance performance. So again, this concept of the values piece and how that can help drive performance, both personal performance and both from a professional aspect as well. So they're my other sessions, Mel, that I'll be delivering.
Well, they sound like great sessions. So, I'm hoping that some of the guys are definitely going to get on and get in and see you, especially on the kettlebell 3D movement. One of the things that I've noticed as a club owner over the last 12 months is that when we're getting new members coming into the club, the amount of our consumer who have been at other venues, whether it's local or it's on a national level, that have been going to kettlebell classes, but the trainers haven't actually been trained in kettlebells. And so I find that, quite frustrating. So definitely if you're a trainer or a club owner and you're heading across to Singapore, definitely get your trainers to pop in and do one of Tarek's sessions. Or even if you're here back home in Australia, definitely give the guys a call at the Functional Training Institute, because I cannot express how important it is to get correctly trained in kettlebells. Now, my other question to you, Tarek, is you've done an awful lot of traveling over the last couple of months. So what's the common theme that you're starting to witness in relation to sales, culture, and workout experience, even though you're in different countries?
Yeah, great question. And I've been doing it for the best part of 4 years. And I also lived for around 12 months in Malaysia, based myself there, and really learned a lot about the cultural aspect of fitness on one hand, but also, it's interesting, even though we think of, multiculturalism in Australia, when, for me, it's like when we speak of fitness and health and movement, everyone kind of speaks the same language, which is really interesting. What's important is how that's delivered. You'll have some cultures, for example, who are a lot more energetic. They just love the visual. And so that might be places like Thailand. I don't want to just hedge places, but it's from my experience that I felt places like Thailand are very vibrant. They're a culture that, very tonal in their language, but they're also very animated. And so making it fun, making it relevant in terms of the delivery. And I think that's what they're about, but more than just that. And then you go to places like Singapore, and it's kind of similar to us Aussies in a way, in that, they're a bit more analytical, bit more independent, so to speak, rather than have a group mentality. And so, there's this dynamic twist there where, we can be a bit more analytical, and sometimes I just be poker face. You just don't know if your point's getting across. But then later on, they're like, yeah, and they loved it. They're giving great feedback. Whereas in Thailand, they'll smile, they'll laugh, they'll giggle. So there's often this dichotomy, which in the end, as I said, both of them, are speaking that same lingo language, which is fitness, movement. It's just done in a different way. And I suppose how that translates into clubs, into the way that trainers teach, kind of is reflective of that. So, the principles don't change too much. It's just about shape-shifting them a little bit to make it relevant to those two examples for, Thailand and Singapore, respectively. In terms of sales, a little bit more tricky because a lot of my delivery and interaction has been mainly in and around teaching technical courses and teaching coaching principles and programming and movements. In terms of the sales, I'm a little bit more aware of that in Australia, but I've had examples of when I've delivered programs, certifications in China, where the feedback was later on that they ended up selling a 50-session pack on the back of having done a kettlebell course because they were able to, incorporate those principles. And then I also, laid over the top of that some more principles around, how they can utilize this to attract more clients. And, even though that might not be a belief of mine to sell 30, 50 session packs, it still impacted them to a point where they were able to have that trust and authority, to make that transaction. So it's a little different in each place. I hope that kind of point has come across too. I just can't give too much more detail in and around that sales process, aside from that example that has been given. And certainly, you'll have your corporate gyms, which effectively operate the same anywhere. I've done a lot of work with Fitness First Asia, and, they have a head office. So from a corporate perspective, they act the same. It's just that cultural piece that differs in each of those countries in how they deliver sessions to clients. And then you've got the boutique gym chains, and in China it's proliferating, massively. And so the demand there, and with our partners, is, how can we actually tap into that market, into that boutique gym chain? And so there's a lot of business opportunities for us, as well as the technical, to impact and build systems. I think that's what the need is more a systematic approach, whether it's sales, whether it's marketing, whether it's team building. There's a yearning for that, I suppose.
So when you're traveling, obviously, through Singapore, Thailand, how many different types of brands are you working for? So, you mentioned Fitness First. What other brands are you working for? And are you able to go into smaller independent clubs and help them with their sales systems?
Absolutely. Like Virgin Active is another one. They've got a lot of gyms in Thailand, in Asia, that is, so Virgin Active Asia, as well as Singapore. So we deliver a lot of the technical education, and now recently they brought me back, well, they will be bringing me back, in October, to be delivering on some business sessions, more about, sort of mindsets for performance, team building, team culture. So I can speak for that in terms of, in terms of the sales specifically and how it may relate to the sales experience that I'm teaching Ignite. I suppose the point I want to get across is that in Singapore, for larger chains, they tend to have their systems down packed, so certainly not challenging that. And I know of other people like Paul Brown, who goes in as, retention-based systems, and he does it very well. So if we go back to the idea of the independent owner, we've done some work with them, and oftentimes it's drip-fed. So, we will help them to understand, hey, once you've done these technical courses, you can leverage the selling arm that you have to make it, A, that you're the expert, that you're the go-to person, and secondly, through that, you can transform them from the inside out. So it's like they've got the skill sets, and what they need is a mindset shift to say, hey, you're not just, a great technician, but in the end, you need to feed yourself. You need to make a career of this. So utilize those new skill sets you now have to now, make a career of it, and therefore don't be afraid of the sales experience. And therefore, again, the language around that is offering options, for example. So part of the sales experience there is don't just offer one-dimensional 30 or 40, 50 packs, for example. Give them a choice, give them 2 or 3 different choices. So, others might want a direct debit type option. And others may still want to do it session by session, but I tend to steer away from that, as you well know in the audience, is that, obviously cash flow becomes a concern. whether it's session by session. So, that's how I go and treat the whole experience when I go out and deliver, whether it's a independent operator with a bunch of trainers. More so the impact is with them rather than the bigger chains who obviously part of their reasoning to bring people like FTI and myself on board is to create a better experience for the member. So that retention ultimately, as you alluded to earlier, Mel, is the key linchpin to everything.
It certainly is. Now, Tarek, while I've got you here, and obviously there's some valuable information and what you just spoke about, please just tell me a little bit about this number one seller of yours, Purpose-Driven Movement.
Yeah, absolutely. Always excited to talk about that. It's a labour of love. I suppose it took 3 years to write, and I'd say a lifetime. Probably more to the point. In that it's effectively the work of myself and Dan Henderson distilled into 300 pages about our system and the adaptive functional training system. And I suppose the hardest thing is, how do you distill something and simplify it to create something that is relevant, for the consumer. So whether it's someone who's, interested in fitness, or whether it's the fitness professional who kind of wants to know more about functional training and wants to know the importance of the system behind it, that's where the book comes in really powerfully. And the inspiration really was born out 3 years ago. We met with Steve Brosman, who you may well know too, and the audience is, and he helped us to cultivate a rethink around our system and to kind of give us the roadmap in which to write the book. So shout out to Steve Brosman, and worked hard at it for the first year, and then we sort of parked it. We parked it for a good 18 months, and then I kind of said to Dan one day, I said, look, something's nagging me. Really need to get this book done. And, it was just always nagging me, in the background there. And so he said, yeah, we'll go for it. Let's finish this off. And so, during my travels, I'd be writing and I'd be interviewing, working with the editor. And it just became such a passion project, really, that ultimately, that back and forth, it was just such a rewarding process. And from that point of view, it's kind of allowed us to be in a position of authority and the experts in what we do. And of course, we had a lot of input from other experts in the field, like Dr. Luke Del Vecchio, Ulrich Larson, and then Emily Splickel and others who kind of helped to contribute in their ways to make it a real success. And as a result, we've sold quite a number of copies in the US, in particular, Australia, of course, in Asia, India, Europe. So we're very grateful for that. And it was a great process, that's for sure.
So the passion project that became a bestseller for Tarek and Dan is called The Purpose-Driven Movement. Now, Tarek, if somebody wants a copy of that, where is the best place for them to go?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can share a link if we can, Mel, I suppose.
Absolutely. We can drop that into the podcast notes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We can drop that into the podcast. Would be easiest. It is on Amazon, but you can get it through our avenues, especially being in Australia. You can get the e-copy for as little as $10, and then the paperback with delivery for approximately $40 to $45. So it's a worthwhile investment. So we can drop that into the notes afterwards. Yeah.
And I look forward to picking up my copy at ExPro.
Yes, I will. Sign a copy.
Absolutely. Listen, Tarek, we're at the end of our podcast now. Can you just tell the listeners where they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, definitely. Look, if they want to get a hold of me through Instagram, it's just coach _ Tarek, Tarek. I've also got a personal website too that kind of focuses a lot on mission and vision and personal efficiency and mindset. So that's coach tarek.com. And that's the Coaching Corner theme. Otherwise, obviously, Functional Training Institute, they can get in touch that way as well. So I'd love for people to reach out and say g'day. And I'm also on Facebook. Facebook as Tarek Michael Shuja. So that's Chouja. And they can find and ping a message. It'd be great to connect with more and more people.
Fantastic. So for those heading over to ExPro, as I said, Tarek will be hosting one of the roundtables at the Ignite sessions. So if you jump over to the website, click up the top where it says seminars, you can book into the Ignite Fitness Business event there. Otherwise, I'll be dropping Tarek's details into the bottom of our podcast, including a link to their bestseller, Purpose-Driven Movement. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon, Tarek.
Thanks, Mel. It was a great pleasure to be on the show and a great honour.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks.